Three, two, one. Hello, fellow scholars in the making. I'm Keshav, and I really like the sound of my own voice.
Hey, I'm the funny one.
Hi, I'm Ram and I'm the chosen one.
Hello, I am Sabyasachi and I'm the babysitter.
Bonjour, I'm Arya and I'm James Franco Pretentious.
Hi, I'm Diva and I don't know who I am. So welcome to ThinkALoud, an initiative by me and these amazing bunch of individuals.
So, the topic that we'll be speaking about today in ThinkALoud's second episode is about intelligence and its functionality in our society. Keshav, over to you.
Well, when we try to talk about intelligence, first of all, the first thing we have to identify is what is intelligence, right? And when we try to talk about what is intelligence, the immediate question that comes up is, well, there are a lot of things that come under intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, there's the general society views intelligence in two ways, right? There's book smart and street smart. And book smart is defined as someone who's good at studies, who can get good marks, while street smart is considered as someone who can analyze and process data fast and come up with practical solutions based on the variation of the situation.
Well, aren't there people who are like neither book smart nor street smart though?
Well, yeah, there are people like that, but I guess we would call people like that a little lower on the intelligence scale, right? Yeah, so there are people who have both, as Keshav you did say. There are people who have both book smartness and street smartness. So book smartness is basically a person who can quickly take an information and retain it for a long time. And a street smart person is basically someone who can actually apply his intelligence in a very actually take an intelligence, process it quickly, and apply it to certain situations when this certain situation demands it. So I guess there are people who can use both of them, and there are people who can't use both of them.
Exactly. So, well, what is an intelligence scale? And is there something which is common behind both street and book smart?
But then again, it can be easily said that the definition of using book smart and street smart to generalize intelligence is very narrow-minded. And with this, we can move on to the multiple intelligence theory. Diva, would you like to explain that one?
So the theory of multiple intelligence was basically proposed by Howard Gardner in his book Frames of Mind of Multiple Intelligence in 1983. So this theory basically suggests that the traditional psychometric views of intelligence are very limited, and therefore he stretches this scale of intelligence, which includes other prospects like personality development and other stuff like your talents and everything. So in order to capture the full range of abilities and talents, Gardner theorizes that people will not need to have an intellectual capacity only. There are other types of intelligence which include musical, interpersonal, visual, and linguistic. So this is wherein the problem comes in my opinion. The way humans from a very long time have had this need to make themselves unique or different from the crowd, and how Howard Gardner basically satisfies this very need of people by introducing such a theory which lays out the definition of intelligence on such a thin platform, satisfies everyone's needs given the moment. But according to his theory, if I am taking an assumption and making a list of people who are good at music, so they should also be good at intellectual capacities. So that's the basis of the theory basically, which is not true in every scenario.
Yeah, because what he's done is intelligence, we try to associate intelligence, which is what we're going to actually have to try and do here, is to define intelligence as the workings of the human mind. Basically, that is what intelligence has to be. And Howard Gardner has tried to take that and expand that into other things such as personality, and incorporate talents and these other things into it, which are not what we would try to associate with cognitive reasoning abilities. And when you do that, you stretch the definition of something so simple just to satisfy the need that everybody wants to be intelligent.
This is a good theory for school educational environment wherein everyone has this need, like everyone has a very holistic approach towards the development of a child psychology.
It's important to note that while this theory may be very useful in school environments and to make other people glorify themselves, it is very important to note that this theory does not have empirical evidence to support it as a whole, and which is why we could also take in the Qs, the IQ, the EQ, the CQ, the AQ, or the SQ, to actually define if a person is intelligent as per their as per the usability of their intelligence as well.
Yeah, matlab, schools, the entire point of a school is, it's a holistic development. That's what a school promises every parent who goes to school, like who sends their children to school. And to blatantly tell you, oh, your child is not as bright as the others in their classroom, it's going to be very hurtful and offensive, I assume. That's the reason this theory is used.
And there's another, and I think one of the other problems that comes associated with this is you commit this fallacy, which is to assume that if a person is good in a certain aspect, they're maybe not as good in another. So you make this conclusion that, oh, someone is very good in mathematically, so he might not be as good physically, he might not be talented in other areas. And this is what some people have dubbed it the RPG fallacy. So if you ever played a RPG video game, you have a certain number of points and you get to spread it out over different abilities. So people assume that everybody has this fixed number of points, and they have different skills which are more ranked than the other skills. While that is not the case, because in real life we do see some people who are excellent in almost every aspect and people who are not good in any aspect.
Okay, and I feel like the way we perceive information and understand it and apply it is what I feel intelligence should be. Because just understanding something, see, there are many people who study 20 hours a day and they'll remember everything from the textbook. On the day of the test, quick questions and the limited amount of time kind of limits them from being able to completely utilize their knowledge, and that can be also considered as lack of intelligence.
So I think what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to define intelligence. And if we're trying to define intelligence, at the basic level, we would have to see that intelligence is about perceiving information, understanding it, and applying it. So this is like the basic definition which we all do agree on.
So basically there is another thing for that. There is a theory of general intelligence to support your statement. The entire basis of intelligence is how fast could you process something and use it in practicality, be it theoretical or practical knowledge.
Yeah, well, just like Malhar was saying, as well as Diva just said right now about general intelligence, a person who can actually process information real time and actually apply it quickly to his own benefit or to the benefit of the people around them. That can be classified as intelligence in our society nowadays, right?
Yeah,
There's general intelligence also includes learning ability on top of that. So learning is basically associated with memorization. So not only do you understand something, but you also memorize it and you build upon this knowledge to be able to do more and more complex things. Then there is another part of intelligence which is about creativity. So creativity is about developing entirely new solutions which are not related to the information that you have gained or what you've understood. So you're developing something original or something new.
exactly. Like Newton, when the apple hit his face while he was resting under a tree. There was nothing known as gravity back then, but using his general knowledge of physics from back then and combining it with the creativity of the apple falling down, he started a completely new theory that currently runs the way in which our physics works.
And actually, if you understand the process of theorizing, that comes under abstract thinking, which is you're not thinking about something which you can see in the real world. So it's not present in the material world, but you're thinking about it. So that is abstract thinking, which is about doing complex mathematical problems beyond arithmetic. So algebra and the other more complex branches of mathematics, then higher level thinking about things, deeper thinking, and even empathetic thinking, which is trying to see something from another person's point of view. All of this comes under abstract thinking.
Completely agree with you. Another part of intelligence. So basically, we can say that intelligence consists of multiple factors, and the level of these factors varies with different individuals. And the way in which all the individuals apply it is what really matters more than the way they perceive it.
True. And if you will see nowadays, there's a trend where people have been really comparing their IQ. Nowadays, IQ or the intelligence quotient. It has been one of the most popular things to compare when it comes to other people. So before we move on, I think it's important for us to discuss what IQ exactly is. The mental potential and the academic ability of any person. So for instance, IQ again, as Malha had said before, IQ depends on the genetics as well as the environment in which a person grows up in. So when I say environment,
I mentioned that yesterday in the pre-recording, but let me just go through it. So according to research, it shows that a person's intelligence is 50% based on their parents' genes and 50% based on their education, the environment they grew up in, the people around them and how they've influenced it, and the general raising up of that kid. And so basically, your intelligence depends upon 50% on your genes and 50% on the environment in which you grew up in and how you've taught yourself.
Right, very, very true. And as far as we see it, there's this very popular concept called as epigenetics. So basically, please don't mind me, followers, that I'm going into a little technical details over here. But epigenetics as a whole, it speaks about how genes in human beings function. So even if your parents are intelligent and they have passed on the intelligence genes to you, if your environment for development is not great, and if you're not being taught the things that you have to be taught in various age levels, then epigenetics will basically mute the genes that are required for intelligence. So yeah, so that is the main crux of the entire intelligence quotient and the issue that we are facing nowadays when it comes to intelligence as a whole.
But hey, look at the bright side.
Yes, Malhar.
Look at the bright side though. If someone calls you dumb, you can always blame it on other people, like your parents and your teachers. If a teacher calls you dumb, just say it's your fucking fault, not mine.
When we're talking about IQ, one of the things I would like to tell the listener is you need to understand IQ in the sense of how do you measure IQ. So if you were a person who was measuring IQ, how would you go about that, right? What you do is you generate a randomized list of any questions, okay? And these questions, the only thing that they need to be solved abstractly. And these questions, therefore, they can be solved linguistically, mathematically, they might be related to spatial skills, anything. They just need to be able to be solved abstractly, which means there is no specific thought process to solve them. They rely on the rationalizational ability of the individual and the processing ability of the individual. And so you take any questions like this and you generate 10 different lists of such questions, and you give these tests to 1,000 different people and tell them to answer it. When these people answer these 10 different tests and you compare their results, the people who are higher in one particular test, they will also be higher in the 9 other tests, and with very, very high consistency. So this shows that there is some factor lying underneath the intelligence of a person, which is common across all these different spheres which are related to their cognitive processing ability. And this is what we call as intelligence quotient after we adjust it for their age, obviously. And so the average intelligence of any demographic is 100, and stretches from 83 to 120, and beyond, so 68% of a population will lie in this, and above 120 IQ points, you have the smarter people. Above that, you have the I think 140 to 160 is the geniuses, and below that you have the people where retardation occurs and they have trouble with learning C, right? And this is actually true in the sense that if you give a person of say 2020 and you give them an IQ test which was made in 1920, they will score much higher. So the people of the corresponding generation, when they saw the IQ tests of the previous generation, because IQ tests have been modified and updated throughout the years, so the people of the latter people, if they solve the previous IQ test, they score higher than the averages of the previous people who have solved it of that generation. So intelligence and better healthcare, better diet, these are factors which play into the IQ of a population.
I feel like importance is if intelligence is everything, right? To be anyone, to be anything in current society is so political. Not just political, it needs so much manipulating, cognitive thinking, like you said, planning, management, timing. And unless you don't have the intelligence to be able to consider all these factors and to apply it properly, it would not be possible to be successful in current society. And even when we look at the most powerful people around the world, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, they are one of the smartest people out there. And the only reason they're this rich is because of their smartness and because of their pure ambition to use that smartness and apply
But let's not
it on
also
a
forget
global
the
scale.
fact that there are pioneers. I agree with Malhar completely about there being pioneers with higher IQ who have been shaping the destiny of the world. But without the people with low IQ to actually, support their dreams and, do whatever the higher IQ people want them to do, this entire worldview would not have been possible, right?
No, not really. No. Don't, I mean, that's one way of putting it. No. You asked me a question. Let me finish. Okay. So I'm not saying that all intelligent people will succeed. But when you look at it, sometimes even knowledge is not important as much as intelligence is. If you're smart enough to understand that an idea is good and it has a prospect to be a global phenomenon, then all you have to do is develop towards it. You don't necessarily have to know everything about the topic. As long as you have the general information and intelligence to understand how human beings can think and how they will perceive information and what type of information will be perceived as right or wrong. It can be used to completely manipulate everything, including markets, to get.
I mean, look at so many people draw. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Malhar, I interrupted you. Please go on. Acha, so, I mean, look at so many people passing out of Harvard, right? But the people who are actually leading the world ended up to be the Harvard dropouts. So that is a very interesting thing to look at as well.
And maybe they just thought that Harvard was too dumb for them, or maybe they thought that they could not learn anything more, and all they were learning from there was knowledge when they wanted to use their intelligence to actually do something meaningful out of it.
And see, that's why I disagree with you. You are planning, see, according to you, you don't have to have the knowledge in order to implement intelligence, right? But if you're not aware about stuff around you, how are you planning to implement stuff, regardless you having the intelligence? Yeah, verbatim sounded like that.
Okay, can I rephrase then what I'm trying to say? Okay, what I'm trying to say is that you just need relevant information. You don't have to be knowledgeable about everything, but only the relevant information to be able to do. Like for politics, all you need is to understand human emotions and human psyche to be able to influence a crowd of say 40, 50 people. And you need a better understanding of mob philosophy and crowd philosophy to be able to rally millions and millions of people behind your cause with undying patriotism and belief. And that's also a way of intelligence, right? At the end of the day.
that is a way of intelligence, but that's a way of implementing an idea as well, right?
Yes,
If you're
that's
aware
what I mean.
about,
That's what I mean. That's all I mean.
but in a wider sense, since a very primitive time, intelligence has been directly linked towards the survival capacity of a human. So
Yeah, and
exactly, that's it. There are other creatures who are smart, but the only
right.
unique feature of ours is that we are able to form social and emotional bonds and implement them towards change, and
Right.
using intelligence throughout the process.
And I feel like the role of importance in society is the implementation of it. No matter how good you're at perceiving information, even understanding it or storing it, at the end of the day, it matters how you implement it in the real world, which correlates to success.
Exactly. And if I may add a single point over here when it comes to evolution as well. If you guys remember, we have ancestors known as the Cro-Magnon man as well as the Neanderthal man, right? So now the interesting thing is that both the Neanderthal man and the Cro-Magnon man had mental capacities higher than that of Homo sapiens, that is normal humans. So Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthals, they were both vanquished completely by the Homo sapiens simply because Homo sapiens had a stronger culture than they did. So that is another interesting thing to note as well.
And secondly, another thing I would like to add, the other two species that you mentioned were more hunched and were kind of four-limbed species where they use their forelimbs for walking as well. And
Malhar.
for them, because of their okay, off topic, right?
No, it's not off topic. The Neanderthal man and the Cro-Magnon man, they were completely erect. So, yeah.
The other one I'm talking about. Okay, so the way humans eradicated them was they could use spears and they could throw stones, which the other species were not capable of. What was the third one? I forgot the name.
The thing is, they were capable of that, but they relied on their brute strength more because the Neanderthals were larger.
Yeah, they relied on the brute strength more. And the the Homo sapiens used their intelligence and maneuvers and tactics to defeat these and eradicate these species, kind of committing mass genocide.
If you heard what Sabya said, if you've heard Sabya's verbatim, he basically said that these people were more intellectually capable than us. But the only factor why we survived was because of our emotional bonds and culture.
I don't think that's completely right because there are things that play into it, such as luck as well, because the
I'm
Ice Age came
reviving.
about there.
No, in this current point, I'm just
Yeah.
reviving what Sabya said. I mean, I know there are a lot of factors like probability and luck and everything.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And also, secondly, there's no evidence from this time. You're just analyzing fossils and determining what happened. So, can't really exactly claim what exactly happened.
Obviously. No, but if you remember, the Ice Age came around that time, right? And so when the Ice Age came, the Neanderthals they were also heavier and larger, and so they needed more calories to sustain their body mass, whilst the Homo sapiens were smaller and lighter and they did not require as much food, which also helped them with the survival.
Interesting fact, the Neanderthals were actually built to survive the Ice Age, so that is
No, but they need more food for that. Yeah, so a reason why a lot of them fell extinct was that. So this basically what we are understanding here is intelligence is not the only factor which determines success. There's stuff like ambition, there's stuff like perseverance, there's the ability to actually think rationally and clearly, because a lot of the times people who are very smart, they fall prey to biases or to certain heuristics, which is actually a completely different thing. But basically, being intelligent does not mean that you'll also be able to think clearly and rationally. And then there's luck as well. So all these different factors, they combine with intelligence and become predictors of success. So intelligence by itself as a singular factor You cannot take that to be a predictor of. But if you've taken all these things into account, my question is, why do we still worship the intelligent people? Because people who are considered smart in our society, they are given a position where, like, I remember this phrase in Sanskrit which says, uh, "Vidwan sarvatra pujyate." You know, so why is that?
I think the Sanskrit saying was more pertained towards being aware and being more literate, so you can make the right choices with a conscious set of actions. And it correlates to intelligence in a very minor way, more than a major way, where it was talking about literacy more than intelligence, to be more aware more than intelligence, to have more information and to make proper choices based on information instead of stereotypical stereotypes and knowledge passed down from generation to generation. And there is a small correlation there as well, where we do worship the smart people in our society. And I think that comes from the human ambition to be better than the other person. And that ambition drives us to be smarter in a world which is our current society and the way it works. And intelligence being a key weapon over here.
I mean, again, it jots down to what the community and the society accepts as being intelligent. Like, for example, if we take Galileo, he was put to stake by the Vatican just because he had a different ideology about how things work. Even though it was initially appreciated, but later on people were against it.
Even when we talk about witch trials, they were just using basic chemistry to fool people, and people thought of it as magic and were completely ignorant to the whole idea of intelligence and science. So in a way, communal and societal needs have also regressed. So regressed intelligence in a way, and in a way it has also developed it. So there's pros and cons and to both sides and both
I
sides
mean,
of the
what
coin.
I believe, right, you only worship intelligent people who are successful. And not successful as in other factors, but in monetary factors. Like, if you're rich, you're successful, and you're smart, you're considered to be worshipable to some extent. And only then will people will look up to you. That's what I think intelligence has turned out to be in the current era. And that
But also, like, because of people assume that, okay, just because someone has a high level of general intelligence, they tend to agree with a lot of the stuff they say, or at least take their opinions for granted without putting in the necessary amount of legwork to understand them. So, for example, Elon Musk said a lot of controversial stuff, and people just took it for granted. Okay, Elon is saying that, there must be some truth to it. Or you often see that a lot of the general public, in my profession, my teacher gave us an example. So I'm studying to be a chartered accountant, right? And my teacher gave me an example that when you become a CA, people come and ask you about things which you're not really specialized in, but they just ask you about that. They'll ask you stuff about, what they should do for their family, or they'll ask you stuff about, like, even something bizarre like what car they should be buying. When CA is not an expert in that field, but just because they assume that, okay, some person is there and that person is intelligent, they can ask him any question and he should know the answer to any question.
Right, I completely agree with you. I mean, society's perception towards intelligent people is that they expect perfection. While intelligent people can apply knowledge from one field and use it to develop themselves and develop an idea or a research or a project, societal expectations expect the perfection out of them, and maybe that's a fault from society. That's also regressing the mental state of very smart people or intelligent people. What do you guys think
that
about
is
this?
that's been a criteria since a very long time as well. It's not a newer concept that
It's not
smarter
a new
people are
concept,
expected to
but
be
what
perfect.
are your ideas on this?
I think it to be like the Dumbledore effect. Like if you guys have read Harry Potter, you'll see that after defeating Grindelwald as well as beating back Tom Riddle or Voldemort, Dumbledore was thrust upon these important positions like being the chief warlock and the basic ruler of the entire wizarding world, right? So it is interesting how uh, even after all of this, all of the intelligence, it's like the things that they don't really have expertise in, it kind of starts affecting their mental abilities as well, because they are being thrust upon with too much responsibility, and they are being told that there's so much expectations on them that it slowly starts degrading their mental abilities, like we saw as Dumbledore was slowly getting more crazier as he grew older,
Sabir,
right?
let's be honest, you just wanted to make a Harry Potter reference. Yeah.
I was dying to make a Harry Potter reference, my god.
Uh, okay. Yeah, so you know, it's not the best idea that if a particular person is talented in one particular area, you also assume that they'll be good in other fields. And while general intelligence is one important trait, it does not guarantee that person to be good in several other things. So now we've like looked at the tail end of the distribution, which is that what do we do with the really smart people? Okay, my question is, what about the general intelligence of a population? Is what are your ideas about that? So you tend to think that, okay, how dumb is the average person, uh, and you think about,
I think dumb is a very strong word here.
okay,
Sure.
how average is the average a person with an average IQ. And then you realize the most horrifying thing about intelligence is that half of the population is below that stage.
Again, intelligence is a gifted trait. It is not possible for everyone to have it. I mean, it is possible for you to grow in a specific thing and adapt to different things over time by your environmental changes. But again, it's a very gifted trait for very few people around the world.
One example that I recount here, because I think I've seen a YouTube video by Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he made a point which seemed quite profound to me, which I would like to share with you guys. So he pointed out that in the armed forces of the United States, basically the armed forces, they were one of the initial people who took IQ, and during the World War One, they really researched a lot on IQ, and they filtered people for officer training from that. And a law was passed in the states which states that you cannot select anyone in the military, you cannot incorporate them until they have an IQ of at least 83. So what he tried to say was, the military is a fairly good representation of the general society, because if you can find someone to do some kind of task in the military, you should also be able to find some kind of task for them to do in general society. And therefore, if a person is not fit to incorporate into the military with an IQ of below 83, because the military is actually desperate to take people in. They want to take people in because it's a policy tool, because you can bring people from lower classes and allow them a chance to move up the classes, and you also require to maintain an army, because they're USA, they like to bother in other people's stuff.
But Keshav, I have a very big
Yeah.
question over here. Is military really something that we could factor in? Because in a society, there's a lot of politicking going on, right? Every single person, there's a lot of social situations. Whereas military, it's very rigid. It's very up and down. Like,
Yeah, so
yeah,
it should actually be
not
easy
not
for a
respectful.
person to adapt to the environment of a military. And therefore, if someone has a IQ of less than 83 and they're not fit for military, that means that they are probably also not that fit for society. And our society is becoming increasingly complex, and we have to see that what is this percentage of people who are not fit to be a part of this ever increasingly complex society. And the answer about that, which is very, very troubling, is that it's 10% of the population which falls below that line.
Diva wanted to say something right over here.
I mean, you were mentioning the standards for military and the standards for society is going to be two completely different factors. Reason being, military में you need to have the understanding of the activities you're doing. As in, समझ देखो मैंने एक monotonous task में डाला, but the task involves technology. Technology as in you're supposed to understand the working of a machine. And obviously, if I am giving you a simple task, even if it's pushing an on and off button, you need to understand everything around it as well. That's why they have a specific limit in terms of military. But in societal construct,
you need to understand that in any job that you're doing as well.
So there are, not everyone does elite jobs like stock markets or IITians or whatever it is. सब लोग उस
We're
type
not
of-
talking about elite jobs. We're talking about even menial jobs, because there are menial jobs in the
Yes.
military as well.
Even BC jobs in see, you're being qualified in the military. I'm pretty sure जो लोग this qualification is for the people who are going into reserves or going into fighting in general. It's not for people who are becoming janitors or accountants over there. I'm so sure of that.
No. It's for being incorporated into the military.
I don't think so.
That is what it is.
Send me the source, Iska. I can't believe your shit.
Yeah. No, that is what it is. If someone has an IQ of below 83,
मेरे को source send
they
कर.
cannot be taken into the military. You cannot conscript them at all.
So you're basically saying that 50% of India's population can't be considered for military, therefore not fit
See,
for
we've already gone around that. That study is that is an unreliable study.
Oh, I actually
because it's
checked
not taken
various
properly.
other studies as well. So, yes, Malhar.
Another thing is that there's a lot of work that goes into military training. And during that military training, people perceive information and understand it, as well as a lot of, like, if you look at NDA, there's a lot of studies that are involved in the NDA, where they teach you sciences, math, analytics, tactics, and everything. And the IQ test is done after that to decide which field you go into. And after the training, obviously, your intelligence and your way of perceiving information, and after being put into stressful situations and being able to answer them and being able to implement information changes the way you perceive knowledge and changes your intelligence as well. So I feel like even if someone with lower IQ went into the military, after the military training, their IQ does increase by a great fraction, and it does help them survive the military and get acknowledged into it. And the main reason for that is the training part of the whole experience. And if you look at it that way, any job in society has a training phase. Even if you have to work at a call center, there is 2 months of training that you have to do before you can start answering the calls and talking to customers. And I feel like someone can be considered useless after if they can't do the job even after the training. Yeah, basically if they're untrainable, that's when you can consider them as useless.
They're basically untrainable. They're untrainable, and if they're put into a position of working, they're positively counterproductive to the work. So not only do they not contribute anything meaningful, they actually cause loss of work.
Yes, and a lot of these training programs have been very thoroughly developed to increase awareness and to increase the way in which the people perceive the information required for that job. So it's not necessary to say that the 10% of Indian society is useless right now unless they've gone through the training, and then you know that they're completely useless.
Diva, to go back to the point that you were making, so I actually took up the source here. I'll send you the link as well.
Send it to me, no?
Yeah, and the thing is, by military regulation, there is a standardized test called the ASVAB, and it ranks people based on the percentile. And the general regulation is that you need to have a score of 31 percentile or more, and that is roughly comparable to an IQ score on the Stanford Binet scale of a little bit less than 92. But the US law allows them to go as low as 10 if they choose to do so, and that's an IQ score of 83. And
But then, is it there in the article that they're comparing the IQ score with the 31% percentile? 31 percentile and the IQ score is being actually compared in practical situations. Is it there
listen,
anywhere in the
you
article?
have to be able to
No,
understand
let
this.
him complete his verbatim,
Or
na?
is it
No,
पहले.
see. Yeah. And this is actually there, okay? So the US law allows the Department of Defense to allow people with a percentile score on the ASVAB standardized test which the military has made to be as low as 10%, but not below 10%. And 10% corresponds to an IQ score of roughly around 83. Okay, and
But then again, that's your perception of
that's not my perception of it.
मैं perception का नहीं है. That's facts.
That-
Okay. तो फिर
Mala, what are you talking about?
Okay,
It's
so-
part of the
So ASAVB test that I'm studying about it right now. So it is taken during a high school year, which is like the primary educational phase
Yeah.
of any student who's pursuing education. And it's not just that, even in getting qualified in army, there are sort of intellect would not be mattering. Stuff like your physical capabilities to adapt
Those
to
are
different things would
those
also
are
be
separate
equally
things.
important.
But when we're talking about intelligence specifically, if a person has an intelligence of below 83, they would not be taken into the armed forces. And you have to
So-
like, it's a reasonable assumption to say that the armed forces are a good representative or a good sample size to take for the larger society as well. Because there are so many different functions in the army, you can certainly find a role for someone to do in the armed forces that you could also find them to do in the society.
Not necessarily, no.
Why not?
Like basic stuff like moving bricks from one point to
There
another
is manual
point.
labor in the
उसके लिए-
armed forces as well.
There is, but
Yeah, but then armed forces not only manual labor, right? It's a combination of multiple jobs, and the reason that the IQ test works is because they need a combination of multiple.
Which is why they usually take.
But when you talk about listen, when you talk about normal society, a person only has to take bricks from one place and keep it to the other place. They don't have to do the remaining tasks that the military has to
Listen.
do.
Just
So can you
looking.
really say that they need a 82% 82 IQ to actually take one break in place?
A person is not a machine. They're not meant to be doing only that one task, okay? If a person is in society, they need to be able to socialize. They need to be able to marry. They need to be able to handle their taxes. They need to be able to do a lot of tasks. It's not just that one thing. So what they're doing for their occupation or their profession, even if you look at their occupation, just following that certain instruction, a person who is a bricklayer, they're not doing just that one task all the time. Bricklaying itself, there are different types of situations which come up in it. So you're oversimplifying it right now, and you're saying that, you know, we can find a simple function for them to do. But then what happens when AI comes in and you start to automate those kind of tasks? So you're making
so tell me, according to you, you're telling a specific percentage of people, which I am pretty sure you said 10%
Yes.
of the population falls under this category.
Yes.
So what do you think we should do with these people? Should we
No,
just
that
kill
is
them
the
off,
question.
put them in a gender
I'm
settled
not saying
condition?
we kill them off. Now that is a completely different question. But what I'm saying is, as a society, we have this struggle that there is a good chunk of society which we need to be able to find certain roles for them. We need to either create a
See-
welfare state for them. We need to create certain charitable institutions for them.
It already exists. No, it's not being. It is there. Like there are a
You need to
specific
provide
percentage of.
certain. No, but you need to provide certain
there are already
facilities for them.
वो है, they are already in place. There are charity events. There is government incentives in the US itself. If your child is suffering from a mental disability and you're living in a condition in which you're not getting the average income of what an American should get, you'll be given government incentives. That's there in place. There are many charities. There are many help programs. That's all fine. वो सब है place में.
Not to the extent which they should be, though. That is the thing.
Abhi, you see, ultimately it all joins to this natural selection of what organism could survive given the circumstances, right? So in the earlier days, the circumstances was कि कौन खाना खा सकता है, कौन digest कर सकता है और कौन जिंदा रह सकता है. अभी it's progressed more to who can perceive information, who can understand everything, who can do tasks in the most efficient and the most effective way possible. And again, these people, if they are not worthy of living in the society, which is a very controversial statement to say, and but if they're not worthy, they'll be naturally eliminated, regardless उसको हम कितना incentives provide करेंगे, कितना help करेंगे.
Never going to say. Because what we do in our society right now is we try and have systems in place to help those who are not as capable to survive. Because based on natural selection, they actually would not survive. But we...
See, so that's the thing, right? We are following, we're adhering to the international humanitarian laws in which every human is to be treated equally, regardless of practically any limitation they are going through. And since we have made this construct for ourselves, just maybe have to adhere to every human, regardless them being not that bright and being bright. We can't really do anything about it. If these bulk of people are to be eliminated, say in the coming 50 years, that will happen automatically. We don't have to worry about it.
Keshav, think of it in this way. Like we were speaking about epigenetics, remember? So think of this entire society like an adverse situation or an adverse environment. So every single thing that we're doing over here is a question of survivability, right? So like earlier times, we are not being hunted by predators. The main thing that is hunting us right now is basically the brain and the intelligence of the society. So
it's the quest to find resources, which is basically
basically. So
to earn money.
your capability of earning money, and not only that, your capability of using your intelligence. So the smarter a person is, I'm using the word smarter over here, not intelligent. I'm using the word smarter over here simply because as the person is smarter, the better survival rate that person has, right? So simply by this survival of the fittest, just like Diva just said a few minutes ago, that simple thing will be applicable over here as well. So, and taking the point that you had said before about addition of AI, that is simply humans adding a separate kind of an adversity to the environment right now. So with this addition of AI, or it can't exactly be said AI, it's more like VI, but yeah. So addition of VI and using VI to carry out menial tasks, it will basically speed up the process of natural selection over here. So thus kind of supporting Diva's point of saying that people in the next few years, in the next few thousand years, or a few hundred years, the people who have lower IQ will simply be eliminated from the society by not even being born.
Well, for that you'd have to stop the people who are having lower intelligence from procreating.
No, we are not doing a genocide right now. हम ऐसा कुछ plan नहीं कर रहे हैं. वो हो जाएगा. Naturally हो जाएगा वो. जैसे.
Yeah, but.
Yeah, again, remember Kesh.
नसबंदी नहीं करवा रहे हम लोग worldwide. लोग ये वाला लोग खेले, टेंशन मत ले.
No, yeah, see that. So again, coming back to the point of how a person develops a high IQ, environment also plays a 50% genetics, 50% environment. So if the environment is conducive enough for the child, which nowadays is way better than the earlier times, it is conducive enough for the child to, grow up to become an intelligent person. It doesn't always depend on genetics, right?
And secondly, another thing is a person can increase a small degree of their IQ to suit a particular profession by self-teaching or learning on the job. So it's not necessary that they will stick to the same IQ for the rest of their life. That's why age is considered as a factor, because with more experience you gain, the more knowledge you gain. And knowledge, I'm not talking about their brain proficiency, I'm talking about knowledge.
No, only during the developmental stages. Actually, as a person gets older, their IQ starts dropping.
Right.
This is where Malhar, you're contradicting yourself. In your previous verbatim, you were telling that knowledge is not important, it's not a factor for intelligence, and you're telling Abhi it is important.
No.
Well,
I was answering Keshav's question on how these people would fit into society, and I was giving an example that it's not necessary that they have to be intelligent, and with gaining knowledge and everything, they can also fit into society.
So I guess Malhar, we won't exactly be calling
IQ,
right? We won't exactly be terming it as IQ, because if a person.
अभी इसके बाद क्या करेंगे, हम लोग खुद का एक्सपीरियंस बना के ना डिस्क्रिप्शन में डाल देंगे, मजा आएगा. अभी जो लोग इसमें पास होंगे ना, उन लोगों को लेकर हम कल्ट बनाएंगे इंटेलेक्चुअल लोगों का और मजे करेंगे. और कुछ नहीं अपना. The cube.
Well, I think one of the things that we
ThinkALoud cult.
talk
The
about
cube
is
cult.
that intelligence is a gift and it's rare, right? But somewhere I feel that just as much as it is a gift, it is actually a cursed gift. And the reason I feel that is because I find that intelligent people are generally less happy.
So what I believe, right, is that with intelligence comes this greater sense of awareness. You're aware about how stuff around you can or is probably going down, or how your power over it is literally nothing. And no matter how hard you try, you're not gonna change that thing, even if it's dysfunctional for you and the people around you. And just that realization of helplessness over things is what is also a factor in why a person is sad. Like an intellectual person might be sad.
So, to all our viewers, to conclude right now, we have done a duty of informing you of various perspectives when it comes to intelligence and its purpose in our society. So, we urge you to come to your own conclusions and post them in the comments of our podcast. And let us know what you think about it as a whole. Until the next episode, think aloud over now.